it's Writing Wednesday-ish. It might be Wednesday, it might not. I'm on vacation, I'm uploading when I can. But anyway, it is the latest of my Writing Wednesday book talk videos, and I'm going to be talking about a fantasy novel. Now, I am not a huge fantasy reader, but I do read a bit of it, and I have certain writers that I love. I do love the George R.R. Martin Song of Ice and Fire, even before I watched the Game of Thrones TV series, which I like some things about it, not others. My two favorite fantasy writers are Canadian writer Guy Gavriel Kay, who I could do another whole video about, but I'm going to talk about my other favorite fantasy writer, Robin Hobb. And she has written about a dozen books that I've read, no, probably more than a dozen, in the teens. She's written 3 connected trilogies, then another separate trilogy, and then another 4 books that are loosely linked to the first 3 trilogies. So yeah, she's written a lot of books. Except for one trilogy, they're all within the same sort of general world universe. She is brilliant at world building. And what I want to point out about the first series of hers I ever read, which is the Liveship Traders, Ship of Magic, Ship of Destiny, and Mad Ship, is that when I picked up these books, and actually Jason read them first, then I read them, and I was just struck in that she had done something that I had never seen any fantasy writer do before. She had a completely original idea. I thought it was completely original anyway. And that, I think, is the tricky thing with fantasy. Every fantasy is, to some extent, since the mid-20th century, riffing off of Tolkien or playing with some of those themes. And, of course, picking up, older themes from all kinds of mythology and history as well. But in order to do fantasy well, I think you have to build on that stuff and you have to use that stuff. The things everybody expects, a sort of medieval, pre-technological world, usually but not always European, elements of magic or the supernatural, the fantastical, an epic sweep, a battle between good and evil, all of that tends to be there in every fantasy novel. But if you can't introduce an element that's something completely new that makes people go, oh, I never thought of that before, then you're not really doing it right. And in the Liveship Traders series by Robin Hobb, the element is these characters are merchant ship owners, which doesn't sound like an exciting class of people to set a novel among, although a lot of it happens at sea, and yes, there are pirates. But the thing that makes it unique is the live ships. This one group of families in this particular town has a monopoly on these ships which are built from this special, very, very rare wood, which has the quality of being able to become sentient. So if you build a ship out of it, the ship can actually communicate with its owner, it can know and make choices and develop a relationship with the family that owns it and sails it. And that, of course, adds a whole extra level of dimension. Plus, it ends up adding a lot of backstory because, of course, it turns out there's a reason why this wood has these particular properties, and that unfolds another whole story. The complexity of this level of world building is amazing, but what I really love about it is that it introduces, among all the familiar fantasy elements, one element that nobody's done before. And that's what I think fantasy has to do to be great. That's also, incidentally, why I don't write fantasy. I have written a 2-volume epic fantasy, which I worked on for several years, never had any luck getting published, but I never did a lot more with it after I wrote it and sent queries to a few publishers, because when I look back at it now, I think, there's nothing in that novel, there's nothing that's not in some way a character or a trope or an idea that I've read somewhere else before. There's no one truly original thing. And I think if you haven't got that one truly original thing, you probably shouldn't write fantasy. You can read it, but maybe until you come up with your brilliantly original idea, you shouldn't write it. And that's what I'm sticking with for now. But who knows, maybe someday I'll have my brilliantly original idea and I will break out of the historical fiction mold and I'll suddenly start writing fantasy. Who knows? Watch the space for further developments. Also watch the space for next week's video when I will be back from my vacation, and I will be, if everything works out, posting a cool video about a book shot in the location where the book is set, and that will be the end of my summer book talk series. See you next week.